Hey everyone, my name is Wedge, and today we're looking at one of the newest and most exciting decks in Standard, Green-Red Monsters. This deck is a mid-range deck, so it focuses on dropping some early mana producers that lead into quick turn 3 4-drops. It uses the superior quality of its creatures to overwhelm its opponent and become monstrous, destroying everything in its wake. Let's take a closer look. As always, we'll start with the mana base. There are 24 lands in total. 9 forests and 7 mountains make up the basics in the deck. There's also 4 Stomping Grounds, 3 Temple of Abandon, and 1 Mutavault. The dual lands make as much sense as ever. You want both of your colors all the time. The Mutavault is there to provide some additional board presence when needed. As far as green-red creature decks go, this one is a little light on creatures, only running 22. The bottom of the curve is a playset of Elvish Mystic. With the help of 4 Sylvan Caryatid, these mana producers create easy opportunities to make other creatures monstrous. The only other creature in the 2 slot is Scavenging Ooze. Just too good to pass up, Green-Red Monsters runs 3 of this nightmare. It's always been effective and it always will be. The creature base skips the 3-drop slot entirely. However, 4 mana is a popular number for this deck. To start, it runs 4 Stormbreath Dragon. This guy is being hailed as the new Thundermaw Hellkite. While he cannot do the same things the Hellkite did, he does enough on his own. The ability to become monstrous for a pretty reasonable amount of mana is very strong, especially on a flyer. In addition, his pseudo-burn monstrosity trigger isn't half bad. He's just a really good aggressive card. Next, we have 3 Polukranos World Eater. This guy is a no-brainer in a monstrosity deck. If you can ramp enough, he's a one-sided board sweeper. Also, 4 mana for a 5/5 without a drawback is never bad. Ever. Finally, Ember Swallower puts in an appearance on the list as a 4 mana 4/5. While it doesn't have that extra bit of power Polukranos has, when he goes monstrous, you can probably cripple your opponent. Running 2 of this guy is pretty strong. He doesn't take up a lot of slots, and even without being monstrous, he's fairly costed for his power and toughness. Great for this kind of mid-range beatdown strategy. The last creature in the deck is Ghor-Clan Rampager. We've seen this bad boy before, and there's a reason why he's back. Running 2 of him doesn't guarantee you'll get to Blood Rush him, but there's a decent chance. On his own, he isn't terrible, but his combat trick is devastating. It just provides so much reach, especially in a post-Kessig Wolf Run world. This deck runs a card we've come to expect from Green-Red, Domri Rade. A full playset of the Gatecrash Planeswalkers still support the strategy, and no one is surprised by that. He's cheap, he gets out on turn 2 off an Elvish Mystic, and he gives card advantage. While this deck does run a few creatures less than the older green-red aggro decks, 22 is still more than enough to count on his plus ability. Interestingly, there are also 3 Chandra Pyromaster. This is an addition that hadn't really become a staple in these kind of decks, but after this past weekend, you can expect that to change. The Pyromaster fits amazingly here. The middle ability gives the deck an extra card to play. It's that simple. You have so much ramp in this deck that by the time you play Chandra, you can pretty much play whatever you want, and sometimes even 2 of whatever you want. Adding Chandra to this list just accelerates your board presence. Beyond that, being able to control combat by preventing blocks is a huge help to a deck with big creatures and few evasion abilities. Genius addition. There are only 7 non-creature, non-walker spells in the deck. 4 Mizzium Mortars and 3 Lightning Strike make up a solid burn package. We've been around the block with Mortars long enough to know it's amazing. One-sided board sweep in an aggressive deck is basically game over, and anything the Mortars can kill can get eaten when Polukranos goes monstrous. With the additional ramp from Elvish Mystic and the Caryatid, overloading it shouldn't be that difficult. Lightning Strike is Searing Spear. Pillar of Flame was there before this, but then it rotated. Searing Spear was also here before this, but it also rotated, if in name only. 3 damage is the new magic number when it comes to burn, and you can expect this card to be in most decks with mountains, unless they're control, which might lean toward Magma Jet. Maybe. Moving on to the sideboard, we start with 2 Mistcutter Hydra. It's pretty clear someone in R&D has no soul and absolutely hates blue. If they were going for a control hoser, they got one here. Can't be countered, great against blue. Protection from blue, it's pretty good against blue, I'd think. Has haste. Blue's pretty slow. This guy is just great against blue. Next, we have 2 Burning Earth. Before spoilers started up, this card was all that we talked about, and for good reason. It destroyed any deck that focused too much on shocks. Now that the temples are in standard, there's no reason this card is going anywhere. This should see sideboard play in every red deck. No reason not to. 1 Destructive Revelry is just value. Against a deck that just happens to run an enchantment or artifact package you don't like, you get to hose them and deal damage. While there is only 1 copy in the sideboard, you will be going through your deck so fast with your walkers, hopefully you'll be able to find it before it's too late and their Ratchet Bomb ticks to 4 somehow. 2 Ruric Thar are pretty awesome against control decks. 6 mana for a 6/6 is okay. There are better deals than that in terms of body size. However, whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Ruric Thar deals 6 damage to that player, which is hysterical. As a control player, I hate this guy with a passion. He's so annoying. If he resolves, what am I supposed to do? Fight him with my Omen Speaker? Aetherling, I guess. I don't know. I just really hate this guy, though. 1 Bow of Nylea is pretty commonplace since release. The card is just so versatile, there's no reason not to run one in your sideboard. Death Touch is always great, especially against other aggro decks. Dealing 2 damage to flying creatures is pretty decent as well. Gaining life is super good against burn decks. The bow just fills so many roles, it's pure value in the sideboard. Potentially the best red card printed in Theros, Anger of the Gods fills 3 spots in the side. Slagstorm was amazing. This card is amazing, especially at a time where so many spells deal 2 damage. 3 damage is that new standard you want to get to. Anger of the Gods does it really, really well and exiles everything. Fantastic card against an aggro or even mid-range deck. 1 Fade into Antiquity probably comes in when the Destructive Revelry does. It's good against gods and just as effective against a Ratchet Bomb or a Detention Sphere as any other naturalized type effect would be, with the exception of where it sends the spells. The last card in the sideboard is Peak Eruption. Taking up the last 3 slots, Peak Eruption is a red deck hoser. Great against the mirror, great against mono red, great against control players that are still running red. If a deck has a mountain in it, this card is free value. I'm not surprised to see it here. It's one of the more playable land destruction cards we've seen in a while. As you can see, this deck has one simple goal. It finds the best way to play big creatures and then turns them sideways. There are ways to fight against decks like these. If you're playing blue, Essence Scatter is a great sideboard card right now. The format is new and a lot of people are focusing on more creature-oriented strategies. That card counters almost half of this deck. Supreme Verdict and Ratchet Bomb have always been great mass removal, and that is still true here. While the bomb would normally need to tick up to 4 to make it good, it can still do a significant amount of work taking down the 2 drops in the deck. Detention Sphere is pretty great against the walkers and certain creatures, especially if they go monstrous. If you want some board sweep but aren't playing blue, I hate to say it, but Merciless Eviction may be a thing if you can get to 6 mana. If that resolves, you probably win the game. A big problem here is that Anger of the Gods and Mizzium Mortars aren't great against this deck. There are multiple 5 toughness creatures, but if you're forced into it, the Mortars kill most things. You'll just have to find another way to deal with the Ember Swallower and Polukranos. This deck is big, fast, and ruthless. To win, you're going to have to outpace it or sit back and run it out of gas. If you're playing a mid-range deck against this strategy, it's going to be rough, as Monstrosity is pretty amazing if left unchecked. This deck looks hilariously fun. I can see a strategy similar to this being around in Standard for a long time. If you like smashing around everywhere with huge creatures, it's your lucky day, because green-red monsters is for you. If you have any deck tech suggestions, leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to read them. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.